It all started a couple of months ago. Around the time of Nat's format in 2025, there was a lot of discussion around a very important problem.
YuGiOh might be dying.
Master Duel is destroying the TCG.
YuGiOh is dying.
The death of TCG Yu-Gi-Oh as we know it.
Come on, dude, stop with this content!
This issue has been discussed ad nauseum over the last decade to some degree because it's really tough to collect data from tournaments below a regional level. You just can't really assess how many local game stores stopped running Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments this year, how many players quit, and why individuals decided to buy Rift-bound cards instead of the branded structure deck. Players debated on the source of this supposed decline, with some blaming factors like the popularity of simulators like Master Duel, or the view disparity between content around casual Yu-Gi-Oh compared to the competitive game. I can't really blame them for this kind of discussion because until recently, there hadn't been a lot to look forward to regarding the game. Issues like the falling demand for product, the new player problem, and business decisions prioritizing profit over playability were what people commonly cited when discussing the state of Yu-Gi-Oh! However, I think there is one important piece missing from the discussion that is key to the game's growth. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an awful game to watch. Admittedly, that's a bit of a weighty statement about a game that I'd like to talk about for a living. I'm sure the majority of you, despite what you might say, like watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And I do too. I like it a lot. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has incredible strategic depth, which is why I've published so many video essays on it already. However, if you're watching a stream of a YCS for more than a couple minutes, odds are you've played your fair share of Yu-Gi-Oh! Already, at least according to this poll from my YouTube subscribers. This is just not the case with popular esports like League of Legends or Counter-Strike. According to an admittedly dated analysis by industry information broker Newzoo, non-players made up around 40 to 50% of the audience for these 5 esports, which I'm sure is a contributing factor to why most of these games are still huge in the scene today. Sorry, Overwatch League. I don't think it's a question that, against their better judgment, some percentage of these viewers eventually became players. Strong viewership among non-players is a mark of health for an esports scene, because it represents a fertile ground for potential growth. This is ground that Yu-Gi-Oh! Just doesn't have. So this begs the question, why is the audience of competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Almost entirely made up of players? Let's get the elephant out of the room first. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is complicated. It's so complicated, even its most dedicated players and judges get all kinds of things wrong, all the time.
Lockford
It's Trigger gets banished.
We'll be
It's
on
a
a new
different
chain
card.
link, but it changed locations. We get a judge if you want.
Correct? Okay. Sorry, it hasn't come up yet. My bad.
For this reason, channels looking to stream the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG have the cards stacked against them compared to their TCG counterparts. Games like Pokemon are simpler and therefore better for the viewing experience. In Pokemon streams, overlays can keep track of much of the important game information, including the health, moves, and energy of each Pokemon, the number of prize cards remaining in play, and if a resource like the powerful once-per-turn supporter card has been used already. Other card games like Magic can have similar levels of complexity to Yu-Gi-Oh! Sorry, it's true, but attempt to mitigate it by showing what cards are in each player's hand, and highlighting pretty much every new card that comes into play so that viewers may read it themselves. Konami EU has tried to keep track of players' hands in the past, but in recent years this feature of their YCS streams has fallen by the wayside, and it's easy to see why. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, cards enter and leave the hand and board so fast that there is no possible way to efficiently track and read them all. This problem greatly impacts a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG content. When cards appear for the first time in competitive settings, many creators will pause the match in order to read them aloud.
This is going to be the first post-Juju match that we're posting, and let's go ahead and read some of the cards. So we have Kutu Dragontail.
Deck profiles on new strategies will discuss additions that viewers are likely to not be familiar with, and if you've ever watched a game of the singleton domain format, I know none of you watch this video, you can't lie to me. Vast swaths of it are dedicated to reading cards for the sake of the viewer's understanding. Effects on cards aren't the only difficult thing to communicate in Yu-Gi-Oh! 2. Some game states can only be deciphered by carefully paying attention to the discussion between the two players. Complex chains are notorious for this, with the information about what effects are activating and what they are targeting living only in the duelist conversation, often drowned out by the music and commentary in a YCS livestream. Specific markers have had to be used in the past to represent invisible statuses, like a monster being negated, zones being locked, or that a player is surrendering in TCG livestreams to aid the understanding of viewers, but these are far from standard. Other conditions, like if a player is locked into summoning a specific type of monster, are almost impossible to communicate visually in a livestream. It's no surprise that so many content creators and viewers have jumped ship to Master Duel, since it is much easier to read cards in play, see how chains are constructed, visually understand the game state, and get a sense of the impact of certain monsters, attacks, and effects, purely through the game's animations. Twitch-compatible plugins like Untapped make the barrier to understanding Master Duel even lower, allowing viewers to read any card in the streamer's deck at any time at all. This kind of thing leads YCS tournament streams to not only being one of the least watchable types of TCG stream, but also not even the best way to watch Yu-Gi-Oh! However, for this all to matter, you would have to be able to, watch Yu-Gi-Oh! When you tune into a YCS. One of my biggest hangups with the tournament viewing experience is joining the stream only to be greeted by this segment, and you've probably seen it. Guess the goddamn card. Is that my favorite card, Vanity's Fiend? Just for fun, here's an extremely relevant photo of Cupsy Yummy that we will return to later, so don't forget about it. Tournaments for many other games just don't waste your time to this degree. Let's compare what is aired on a YCS stream to another popular esport that we'll be delving into in a little bit, Super Smash Bros. As part of researching for this video, I went through the VODs of two tournaments to collect data, YuGiOh's European WCQ from over the summer, and Smash's 2025 Super Major, Supernova. I logged what was shown on stream and for how long it was shown, breaking it down into three main categories of footage: the actual matches, the commentary done between matches, and a third category that I'm going to call undesirable footage: advertisements, stock video, the tournament schedule, guess the card. The main channel stream of Supernova looked like this. Almost 80% of stream time was spent showing matches, with around 10% of time spent on commentary and undesirable footage respectively. Now, let's compare that to the WCQ. The European WCQ spent around twice the time showing between match commentary, and more than 2.5 times the time showing undesirable footage. If you tuned into this stream at any random point, you'd only be shown a live commentated match of Yu-Gi-Oh! A little more than half the time. Now, it might be easy to say that this is the fault of Konami's live streaming team, and we'll talk about that later, but I think this problem has very deep roots. It stems from Yu-Gi-Oh's tournament structure. Smash and Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments have two different kinds of structures: double elimination and Swiss. Double elimination is commonly used in fighting games like Smash, and it's pretty easy to explain. Each player starts the tournament with 2 lives, and they play in a bracket. If you lose a match, you get sent to loser's bracket, and you lose your first life. Loser's bracket is much larger because after every round of winner's bracket, half of the players will become losers. If you lose in loser's bracket, your second life is gone and you are eliminated. Swiss, commonly used in TCGs, Pokemon, and chess, is very different. In Swiss, you are usually never eliminated outright, but instead play a specific number of rounds chosen to ensure that no more than a single player is undefeated by the end. Players are not placed in a bracket, but are paired dynamically based on their current win-loss record after every round. In large Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments, the bottom 85-ish% of players are eliminated at the end of the first day. The best 8 players from Swiss after day 2 will then play for the tournament win in a single elimination top cut. Each player gets 1 life. Swiss rounds are a set amount of time, so when the streamed match ends, everyone must wait for the entire round to complete for the next match to be shown. This is why Konami's livestream relies on undesirable footage, because at every YCS, somewhere, Lina and Win get an 8-minute time extension on their match due to a judge call that got appealed. Now, 1,000 players have to wait until their game is finished before next round's pairings can be printed. Let's pretend that I am the average North American weeb born in 1996, a prime candidate for card game radicalization, and I've innocently clicked on a YCS stream thumbnail because I happen to remember how much I liked Buster Blader when I was 8. Damn, that guy's cool. Even though I have no idea who Lina and Win are, or what Swiss is, I am now stuck watching Guess the Card for 15 minutes. Naturally, I'm leaving and I'm never coming back. Double elimination doesn't have this problem, which is why match after match after match can be shown on stream with little downtime in between, leading to weebs of all ages becoming involved with the competitive Smash scene. How could we let this happen? We're getting killed out there. Well, there are many advantages to double elimination. The problems with it make it a worse choice when applied to games like YuGiOh. The main issue has to do with the number of rounds. In Swiss, a tournament of 64 people will always have 6 rounds, since 2 to the 6th power is 64. In double elimination, a 64-person tournament will have 6 rounds of normal winners bracket and 1 to 2 rounds of grand finals, where the undefeated player faces the player that made it out of the losers bracket. This losers bracket is what generally slows down this tournament structure. In losers, a round gets added for each round of winners bracket, since half the people lose. Rounds of losers bracket take turns between matches featuring 2 veteran losers who were eliminated earlier and matches between a veteran loser and a new player who has just been eliminated from winners bracket. What this means in practice is that when you enter losers bracket, you must win way more rounds in a row to reach grand finals than if you had stayed in winners bracket. In this 64-player test tournament I did, a player that lost their round 1 had to win 10 matches instead of 6 to make it to grands. At a large tournament like Supernova, that number goes from 12 wins in winners bracket to 21 wins in losers bracket depending on if you win or lose round 1. This is typically fine within the context of fighting games since there is usually less of an RNG element. The outcome of each match is more often within each player's control. Imagine this in the context of YuGiOh though. You're a professional player who has lost their round 1 due to 2 unfortunate bricks. Your deck is well positioned and your technical play is near optimal, but due to rotten luck you must now play and win almost 9 more matches than you would have had to for a shot at grand finals. A round 1 loss in Swiss is not great, but in double elimination it all but seals your fate when luck is a major factor. There are some other hangups with double elimination too. Double elimination tournaments must be seeded in order of expected performance, so players must now be ranked before the tournament starts, which adds more overhead. In an elimination bracket, players cannot draw and are forced into tiebreakers until a winner can be declared. YuGiOh's previous end-of-match procedures and the new double loss time rules don't make a lot of sense here, since a match going to time could make it so that the future opponent gets a free win next round. These rules are therefore not suitable for elimination tournaments. This has already caused the occasional problem for single elimination side event pods at YCSs.
And that new time rule with the double losses, they're using that even in single elimination, meaning neither player advances in the bracket and the next matchup has no opponent anymore.
This is also the main reason why single elimination top cuts at YCSs are untimed now, because imagine a tournament with no finals or where nobody wins. It would be a PR nightmare. And speaking of time, the time it takes to run a losers bracket with way more matches than winners is something to take into consideration. 21 rounds of YuGiOh just takes an eternity to run, even if each round is pretty much guaranteed to go far quicker than the hour and change it takes for a YCS round to finish. Additionally, many players are in it for the love of the game, and enjoy playing all of their Day 1 matches at YCSs even if they start 0-3 and have no hope of receiving prizing. For these players, Swiss is preferable because they get to play 9 rounds of Yu-Gi-Oh! No matter what. Yu-Gi-Oh's lack of watchability has even deeper causes beyond what is being streamed, however. One of my favorite video essays of all time is Innuendo Studios' Things of Beauty, Super Smash Bros. As Spectator Sport. This specific video directly inspired me to pursue both competitive Smash, which I was verifiably mid at, and video essay production. I guess you'll have to let me know how that's going. In the essay, Ian goes into what made him into a regular viewer of Melee after watching EVO. He describes some of the other fighting games on the EVO docket in such a way that if you swapped in YCS footage, you probably wouldn't think anything was amiss.
They weren't accessible to me. The commentators would describe what was happening in ways that were really interesting in an abstract game theory sense, and it seemed probably quite exciting for the people who played these games, but as my relationship began and ended with watching, I just couldn't get into it.
To him, Melee is different. Melee has the style, the pizzazz, the weirdness, but above all, Melee has culture.
I get to this level of investment, and Smash ceases to be just a game. It's drama. A collection of stories with comebacks and tragedies, monsters and savants. And most of these stories probably aren't true, but they feel true.
So for the first question, what aspects of Melee tournaments make them enjoyable to watch in your opinion? Honestly, if it wasn't for the rivalries and the stories between the players, I'd have little to no interest. It's no secret that a lot of players care a lot about the people playing, especially since watching the Smash documentary. If it wasn't for the storylines behind that, I wouldn't really care about the game itself. There's something about seeing HBox win a major again after like a 3-year period of no wins or watching PPMD commentating that just makes the game feel like so much more than just gameplay, and that's really the aspect that has me hooked.
The documentary that Distant Coder is referring to is a touchpoint in Ian's video too. It's been cited as partially responsible for the revival of Melee in the 2010s from near death to one of the most successful competitive games of today. Its portrayal of the 5 best players of the time, the 5 gods, continues to shape how the game is thought of more than 10 years later. This culture of storytelling, of ascribing a narrative and meaning to events that are almost but not quite random, is what makes Melee worth watching, at least to people like Ian and Distant Coder. It's what spectator sports are all about.
In a recent Turn Down for Walt video, he talks about how the era of the 5 gods was such a perfect storm and mix of personalities. The 5 gods were all extremely different people with different personalities, but were all allowed to shine or clash in some way. Armada vs. Mango was huge because Armada's such a calm guy, and Mango was a crowd pleaser, and the difference in vibes on and off stage made for rivalries that were interesting to follow.
What makes Melee Melee isn't just the game, a lot of it is these stories about the game, and the tension of watching a new chapter unfold live. You don't need to know about the mechanics of ledge dashing to get invested into a grand finals match that is also the battleground of a long-standing rivalry. It's presentation. You have to know who's competing, what their history is, and what a match between them might mean. This is what adds the stakes to a children's game that can create a scene for it from almost nothing, and this is something that Yu-Gi-Oh! Can tap into. An aside, but do you remember poor Cupsy Yummy from earlier in the video? The average amount of time spent guessing the card at the 2025 EUWCQ has passed since then. Even less if you're watching at 1.25 times speed, like I'm sure you're doing right now, aren't you, Farfa?
My name is Garrett Shear, more well known as Fi on the internet, and I wear a lot of hats. I am first an esports commentator, then a Yu-Gi-Oh! Content creator, and now a Counter-Strike content creator covering the esports realm. People in the competitive space of Yu-Gi-Oh! Don't actually try to accommodate the casual audience. How you're able to bridge that gap is include something that is generally applicable to human beings. It's called the human element. I mean, it's just storytelling in general. You know, there's this card called Mystic Mine. Why is it important? You've just explained that. And that's the human element. That's how you bridge the gap between competitive and casual.
Fi's videos exemplify this sort of thing perfectly, and it's why I don't buy the idea that there isn't an interest in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Stories, content, and casting about competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Can be highly appealing, but they require the right approach to make them compelling and, well, approachable. Just glance through Fi's catalog of videos, or the YouTube shorts of Squiddies, or videos like this one about Jeff Leonard by the up-and-coming channel Mono Analysis, or even some of my own work. These videos hit far above the weight class of the channels they were published by, with many crossing the million view threshold that almost all YuGiTubers struggle to reach.
There's huge potential. It's just, I'm disappointed, fellas, because there's so much opportunity to harness that potential to, like, gain viewers and bring new people to the game. And instead, you already cater to people who play the game. And that's a very small portion of the people who actually know what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is. That's how you get million view videos, fellas.
The potential is with these stories stemming from the competitive game, a game that many people vilify due to its sweat and complexity. As seen through this lens, you could easily imagine how Yu-Gi-Oh! Might have the potential to measure up to Melee's current success. Like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Melee is a game that a generation of people played as a kid and are broadly familiar with the basic mechanics of. Like Yu-Gi-Oh!, the gameplay of modern tournament Melee is almost completely alien to the game people played growing up. Like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Melee is not an easy game to get into because of its immense mechanical complexity. The process of learning both Yu-Gi-Oh! And Melee involves facing opponents with skills that have taken multiple decades to perfect, and losing to them over and over and over again. Yet Melee tournaments are breaking size records even now. Is it that unreasonable to think that Yu-Gi-Oh!, with the right approach, could follow in its footsteps to its own renaissance? Even with the headway made by these creators, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a ways to go to show what there is to like about its competitive scene. When I was interviewing Fi and Coder, I asked them about their opinions on what Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs to foster more interest in the competitive side of it. Fi had a lot to say about it from the perspective of a content creator, and the hurdles to creating content similar to his own, or the Smash documentary.
A huge part about YouTube and content creation in general is that when you make a video idea, you have to understand how many people can watch this. Like, how many people can watch this video, grasp what you're putting forward, and follow that. And YouTube understands that. YouTube algorithms understand that. That, like, okay, these kind of people can watch this kind of video. So the more people you try to accommodate and, explain jargon, or use little jargon, or, explain your thoughts, that increases the reach of your video. There's a high barrier to entry to make these kind of videos. For one, you have to be a certain skill level of the game to fully comprehend what is happening, which that takes hundreds of hours of playing games online, playing games in person, locals, regionals, YCSs. It takes a lot of experience to go through it. The amount of effort it actually takes to make these videos is a lot. There's a underlying problem, I feel like, in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which I saw it still exists, which I'm a bit disappointed to see, but 2 years ago when I first started my channel for Yu-Gi-Oh!, Yu-Gi-Oh! Content creation kind of sucks. No one really wants to put a lot of effort into making a single video. They would rather play it safe and, record entertainment content in front of a camera instead of sinking in the extra 4 or 5 days of editing and scripting and researching and weaving together storylines. People don't want to take risks, and I think those kind of videos were seen as risks to current standing channels.
I think there's space in Yu-Gi-Oh! For all kinds of content, but I do agree that the types of videos that can truly energize a community are incredibly tough and risky to make. It's the reason why there are only a couple of examples I could find of people making things even remotely similar to Fi. It's not really a proven model for a YouTube channel the way it is for games like Melee. Coder took a very different approach. To him, this difference in culture directly stems from the place in the community of the top players and their individual personalities.
I think the thing with the Melee community, and maybe an FGC thing in general, that the Yu-Gi-Oh community just doesn't have, is caring not just about individual success of players, but also how dominant one player is over the other. People keep lifetime records of how many times Cody and Zayn have beaten each other, but can anyone tell you how many times Jesse Cotton beat Joshua Schmidt? Probably not, because the community doesn't care the way Melee fans do. In the Yu-Gi-Oh community, people don't tend to root for high-level players. And I want to clarify that I mean this in the most respectful way possible, but high-level Yu-Gi-Oh players are really difficult to root for. Where Melee pros like HBox, Zayn, Moki, or J-Moke have personalities and that it factor when they play, top-level Yu-Gi-Oh players oftentimes have personalities that resemble more M2K or Cody Schwab, which notoriously aren't rooted for as often just because they're more boring people to watch play. Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't necessarily lack this culture though. The proof of that is none other than Triff Gaming and Nesh. Triff went on an insane run of almost 3-peating YCS wins and the people were all about it. They loved it. But why? Because Triff was tweeting about it the whole way, hyping himself up, and getting the people to be hyped for him. And Nesh, when his team won the World Championship, the dude was on stage bringing his opponents up on stage with him because they were his friends, making it more than just about the trophy. Nesh wanted his team's Worlds win to be a story with a happy ending. And that's what the Yu-Gi-Oh community lacks. Too many top players show up, do what they have to do, and leave.
Well, there is definitely some opportunity for the community to assume responsibility for making the culture around Yu-Gi-Oh more exciting. Some of it might require changes with the way YCSs are streamed and organized. In a grassroots game like Smash, this is much easier since the community members run tournaments. In Yu-Gi-Oh, casters have more restrictions on the way they are allowed to speak, which might be a contributing factor to why things are the way that they are.
I mean, it's no secret that YCSs have zero hype behind them. The streams are bland, they look like shit, and they do nothing to make it about the players. YCS streams care more about telling you to go buy the latest set than they do about letting the players' personalities shine. Go back a couple years, and anytime someone would win, they would ask them the same 4 questions after they won.
Tyler, did dueling in the feature match this first round, with all the pressure, all the lights, did that change the way you dueled at all? What stood out in that match in your mind? Are there any deck types that you're looking forward to dueling against this weekend? How are you feeling about your chances of winning this tournament with the deck you're playing with now that you're off to a 1-0 start?
And they would ask these same questions round 1 as they would in the top 4. It was embarrassing. Konami's new hosts like Ed Templar, Kangas, and Jackie do a really good job of making the streams better on their own, but the production as a whole really does a horrible job of highlighting players, their achievements, and stuff like that. Melee talks about rivalries, players' 1v1 match history, how long it's been since they won a major. Yu-Gi-Oh streams don't do that, and they really truly should.
Fi also had good things to say about some of the new commentary talent brought on by Konami in recent years.
They've hired some very good commentators. Shout out to Steve Kangas as well, being an amazing presenter. Jackie Jing as well for being a great presenter as well. The European broadcast is exceptional because their commentator duos have incredible chemistry. Koenig Lionheart and Sebastian Lemke are great faces for the game, and I believe they commentated this year's World Championship as well. They are the peak of Yu-Gi-Oh commentary, and I love them because they are also extremely embedded in the competitive side of the game.
Physical Yu-Gi-Oh events are not built to cater to spectators either. When I went to the NAWCQ, there was a small area for spectators of the match currently being streamed, but at YCS Pittsburgh there was only standing room in front of the stage. In order for a more spectator-focused culture in Yu-Gi-Oh to thrive, the in-person viewing experience must be prioritized at these larger events.
For North American YCSs, please have a designated audience area. For goodness sakes. In fact, the only memorable moments that I have in Yu-Gi-Oh is because of some of the audience's reactions. I mean, again, they do it right in EU because Europe, they're wearing noise-canceling headphones. The commentators are broadcast to the crowd, right? That's a huge difference. Commentators need to be broadcast to the crowd. Players need to be wearing noise-canceling headphones. And, you have a real event. People could go to the event not just to play in it, but to watch it and to make it a true spectator experience.
Seating for a crowd is crucial for the game if Yu-Gi-Oh is to become more spectator-focused. The cheering crowd is an important aspect to show the stakes of the match, and some of the best moments of YCS streams are due to a personality shining through when the crowd is being filmed. The crowd is the community after all, and without that, the game would be nothing. YuGiOh has quite a bit to change for it to start to be able to gain traction as a spectator sport. It's facing problems that every card game has faced, but with more difficulty due to its increased complexity. However, it has the advantage of already being known by tens of millions of people, and this gives the game a lot of potential. YuGiOh might be a tough game to learn and play, but that is what keeps people coming back to it. This limitless skill ceiling is what makes the competitive game worth watching, and it's what makes these stories behind its players so compelling. This is why the trick to saving YuGiOh isn't making the game easier. We have to show why the game is worth learning in the first place. With that, I am out of characters, so I guess this is the end. Thanks so much to Distant Coder and Phi for their answers to my questions. I wouldn't have been able to make this video without them, and thanks to Dan Parker for editing my script. A massive thanks to my patrons, including Dan Parker, Drumstep, Farfa, MBT YuGiOh, Prinrin, Ray, and Steven Marmerstein. If you're interested in watching the interviews from this video in full, or if you want to help my work beyond just a like or subscription, you know where to go. Be well, until next time.